caught me crawling there. The grass was very high. I'll keep on crawling, baby, no, until the day I die, 'cause I'm crawling, singing, baby. Yeah, and I'll remove myself. I don't want you hanging around my mate, but you know, 'cause I'm taking you to be my friend.
I think I'm gonna make it. Put me in the now, please don't surprise me. Nothing in this world so far can drive me. Say that you do with me. Well, I'm just through with you. Say you wanna give me a goodbye kiss. Well, that ain't even on my bucket list. Living all alone, that moves me more than a dog on a bone. Things you do with me, well, I'm just through with you.
Tell us how you got started in Eight Lively Arts.
Ah, Eight Lively Arts, yeah. Well, when all got started, when I first started playing, I was playing with a bunch of different guys, going around to this bar and that bar, sitting in on open mics, or anybody that would have us play. So it was always like playing with different guys here and there, one bar, one tavern, one some place or other place to play. And so I think we ended up playing at a place called Molly McGuire's just off of Front Street. And we were all sitting around, had a keyboard, had a little guy with a drummer with a small trap set, and so we had a bass player. We just sat around. They gave us most of the evening to go ahead and play whatever we wanted. So while we were playing in there happened to be a guy who was coming in there for lunch occasionally, and he worked for Channel 8 here in town. And it just so happened that he was he had a program of his own, and he was like doing art, featuring artists around town of one type or another. So he wanted to do a little stretch on the keyboard player we had and then the guitar player. And while we were sitting around talking about it, I asked him, I said, well, hey, Bob, the guy's name is Bob Jackson. I said, hey, Bob, how about it? You know, what about harmonica player? You going to do a show on harmonicas? You know, and he goes, well, yeah, I guess we could do that. And he didn't really know, I don't think he really took me seriously. So some time went past, and we had been playing in there again, and I ran across him. And I said, hey, Bob, you know, I know these two guys, you did their shows already. How about mine? I'm next. So one thing led to another. He ended up giving me a call back. He said, well, Dave, I got a slot in about 3 weeks. Let's go ahead and do that. You want to put together a show? And I said, sure.
On Eight Lively Arts, in all of these years, we've never featured a harmonica player, and we are this time. And I'm really looking forward to it. We have a show that you'll really enjoy. Now, on a harmonica, you can make a sound blowing out, and then inhaling, you can make a sound?
Right.
Okay, but how do you does it make a different sound when you inhale?
It makes a different sound depending upon how you use your tongue.
I got a key to the highway. Yes, I'm still out and bound to go. I wanna leave here, run for the walking much too. Well, going back to the border, where I'm better known. That you ain't done nothing to drive very good man away from home.
Go up and down now, as fast as you can on that thing.
Up and down? You want me to you want me to hit any notes particular or just?
Now you're getting each note individually?
No, I'm not.
Oh, all right.
No, it's a big slur. But if you're going, that's pretty much individual notes.
I had a duo I was doing with a guitar player in that video, and we were playing out at Rock Creek Tavern. We had a job out there, and we were doing a duo, and I ran into a guitar player that had a band that was playing in there on a regular basis on Sunday nights at Rock Creek. And so he said, "That sounds pretty good. You guys sound pretty good together." He said, "You playing with anybody else?" I said, "No." He said, "Why don't you come in and sit in with us one night? We're playing on here Sundays. We get a pretty good crowd in here." So I went in on a Sunday, and sure enough, they had a big crowd in there, and I started playing. And one thing led to another, so they actually hired me, kind of a part-time sort of a gig. And we did that. I did that with them for a while, and then they asked me to go to Santa Barbara, and I played in Santa Barbara for a month. That was my first road trip ever. And we had I think it was no drummers. We had a keyboard player, a bass player, and a guitar player played a hi-hat, and then I played my harmonica and did singing. And so we were down there for a month. They stayed with Mike Lopez, the bass player, stayed with his family, really nice people. We stayed in there and picked out on Mexican food the whole month. It was fun. The folks treated me good there. So we worked kind of regular. We had a gig downtown, and Joe Cocker would come into town in Santa Barbara occasionally. He lived up in the hills. And so the one place we were playing on a regular basis there in Santa Barbara, he finally showed up. He's kind of lit. I think he had a few drinks, so that was the deal. He kind of liked to go to the bars and sit in with one band or another. So we sat outside in the parking lot, smoked and joked and carried on. And next thing I know, we're inside the bar, and there's Joe Cocker. He sang 3 or 4 songs with us. So that was like, here I am, first road gig, Joe Cocker playing with the band. And then I come to find out, it's like, oh yeah, Joe comes down here all half tanked half the time and trying to sit in with this band and that band. He gets a little obnoxious sometimes, but everybody knows this, he's harmless. So, but it was a thrill for me. And I mean, I just got through watching Woodstock not that many years before, and it was kind of like, there's Joe Cocker. Wow, Mad Dog's an Englishman. This is cool. So then I went back and I was playing somewhat regular with the boys there, and then I met my future wife while I was working with those guys during that time, and then about a year or so later, we were playing out at the Red Baron in Hillsborough, and the guy that was booking the bands out there, he moved to Sacramento, and while he was down there, he ended up hiring us for a month worth of playing. So we went down to Sacramento, and we stayed there. We stayed in Sacramento. There was a guy had a 2-bedroom apartment, and there was 8 of us in the band, 5 of us in the band, or 6 of us. Yeah, with the 2 guys. So there was 8 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment, which got really cozy, and everybody got into each other's nerves by the end of the month. So, but Kathy and I would go back and forth to Mill Valley. We had our dog there, and I had some friends. One of the guys there that I was staying with, his friend of his had a music store. And in the course of the month, they offered us a full day of recording in the studio. And so I tried to get everybody all worked up about it. Now I was really pumped up about it. This would have been my first opportunity to do any kind of studio work. So uh, everybody got up the next day. I think we were all kind of burnt out, but one of the girlfriends copped an attitude, and for one reason or another, we didn't get out of there till close to noon. It didn't get into Sacramento or to Mill Valley till a little after 2, and it took another 2 hours. So we didn't get ready to record anything until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, but we ended up getting it close to a dozen or more tunes on the tape, and so that was a real experience. And we finally finished up there and came back home, and within about 6 months or so, they had started reconfiguring another band, and I kind of was doing some other stuff anyway, and I had a business of my own, so I started playing around town with this guitar player and that guitar player, doing duos and sitting in with bands. And then I kind of got tired of doing the acoustic thing, and I sat in with a band that I knew some players in, Liquid Blues, and they were playing over at the White Eagle. And I went in there to sit in, and they were losing their saxophone player at that time, and so they kind of were looking for another player to fill in his spot. And I went and sat in with them, and it wasn't all that long after I sat in with them, they hired me to play with them regularly. And so Liquid Blues, I was in for close to 25 years. And we did private parties, and we did gigs once or twice a year up in Mount Hood, government camp, Pray for Snow gigs, and we were kind of the permanent band up there for, seemed like the first 5 or 6 years I played with it, maybe longer. And but we were just playing sparsely, and then I had all this open time. I had several, like maybe we do 6 gigs in a year, private parties and an occasional gig at the mountains. So it was a kind of a party band. And after I got done playing with those guys for 2-3 years, I was doing some duo work with a couple of other guitar players, like I was saying. And I started to, I hooked up with a guy named Kelly Joe Phelps. He asked me if I was interested in doing some more gigs with him, so we started doing a happy hour downtown. And that was like once a week. And so I cut my day short, and I'd race downtown, and we'd play Kelly's Olympian. And in the process of doing that, some guy came in and filmed the video of us. And then we were playing in another place a year or so later, and we taped some of our live performance, and that actually turned out really good. And we took that recording and it turned it into my first cassette that I ever recorded, which was Traditional Blues with Kelly Joe Phelps. And then we went around and played Folk Life and went to the Saturday Market and then played there and did some other stuff downtown at this place and that place. And then once that kind of ran its course, Kelly started getting interest from real, like American Records and some of those real recording companies that they out looking for talent. And so it was time for him to move on and for me to find another gig. And so I was fortunate enough to play with Steve Cameron to fill in for Bill Rhodes one time, and they were doing a duo at this bar out on Division Street, and I filled in for Bill one night, and Steve and I hit it off real well, and he was playing with this lady in town. Her name was Sheila Wilcoxon, and she'd had a number of bands, and she was in this was the second configuration of this band. So they needed a harmonica player. They didn't have one, and it just so happened I was at the right place at the right time. So I started playing with Sheila and Steve for, I don't know, close to 3 years. And I was lucky enough to get a couple of Muddies Awards out of that trio for acoustic blues. So I was really jazzed about that. That was one of those things that I just got to win a Muddies Award. You know, you're not accepted in the blues community unless you win a Muddies Award. So got lucky and got a couple of those off of those guys. And I did a lot of traveling, went up and down into Washington a bunch of time, into Vancouver. We did a really kind of unique thing when I was playing with Sheila. We went to she had got involved with these, they're called booking conferences. And we went up to Spokane, and you go up on stage, and we went there earlier today, and she had brochures or something like that. So she would go and set up her little booth, and she would advertise her trio and what we had to offer, kind of style of music. And so she'd get so much time to present that. And then in the afternoon, they dedicated, the time was for the bands to go up and play on stage for so much time in front of all these different people from different cities around Idaho, Montana, up into Canada and Washington State. And so you get up on stage, and there's a traffic light on one side of the stage, and just when it's green, you start playing. And then after you play about 20 minutes or so, you get a yellow light. That means you got about 5 minutes left to go. And then as soon as the red light comes on, well, you got to stop. Whatever it is you're playing, you got to stop. And then everybody sort of writes their little assessment. So we got a bunch of gigs out of that, a bunch of festivals, a bunch of private engagements at these weird locations in Idaho and in Washington. We played a bunch of festivals up there. Did the Port Sounds and Blues Festival. And we stayed at the officers' quarters, and that was really fun. And I would have never gotten an opportunity to do those gigs if I hadn't been with Sheila and Steve. So we ran around and called ourselves it was Backwater Blues, and we did pretty well. We did a couple of big festivals up in Canada, and then that kind of ran its course. And Sheila went on to do some other things, and I went on to do some stuff with Steve. And Steve and I started doing a duo together, and that must have lasted about 5 years. And we cut a CD called The Blues Police, and that sold at some of the gigs. We marketed that at festivals and what have you. But Steve ended up leaving town, and I had booked a gig with Steve, and I didn't know who the heck to put in his place. So he says, "Oh, call Terry Robb. He'll do the gig with you." And I thought that was a long shot. So but I called him anyway. I got his phone number and called him anyway. Sure enough, he said he'd play. And we played at this club out in Forest Grove, and we packed the place. And then after that, he started hiring me for gigs, and I did duos and trios, 4 or 5 pieces with him. And over the course of 5 years, where I played these little engagements, we got some gigs at some of the casinos, and he had some acoustic gigs that we booked over in Vancouver, and a museum after hours, and once again, I would have had the opportunity to play with in those gigs unless I was playing with Terry. And so about that time, I started playing with Terry on a regular basis. The band Liquid Blues they were having some struggles with booking this gig and that gig, and then they canceled some gigs, and I missed some gigs with Terry, and I got upset. So I just decided to start playing with Terry for a while and move on and do some different things. So I left Liquid Blues after almost 25 years. It's a shame because I liked all those guys. We all got along real well, but it was just the booking conflicts were more than I could deal with. So Kelly Joe and Sheila Wilcoxon and Steve, and Steve again, and then I started working with Terry. I could see me play here and there, and I was playing at some of the blow-offs and doing this and that, and I couldn't wait. I remember when I was with Kelly, I couldn't wait till somebody would hire me for one of the blow-offs. And finally, when I was playing with during the time I was playing with Kelly, Bill Rhodes approached me and asked me if I wanted to do one, and I just absolutely, yeah, I would do one in a drop of a hat. I wonder why he hadn't asked me up to this point. And so, needless to say, I got involved in doing that. And I remember the first gig, I was so nervous that I didn't have a band to play with, and I didn't know how to communicate with the band, with the backup band, which was really good. So I was fortunate enough to have one of the harmonica players that had done a number of the blow-offs, Arthur Morey. He had a little trio, and he lent me his trio to do the first blow-off with, and that was nice that I got a chance to rehearse with the band, and I knew what to expect when I got up there, and the guys knew the tunes, and so we went through it, and I was pretty happy with the gig. It went well enough, and I didn't have to worry about too much communication with a band. Then as time went on, I got a little bit more comfortable with that, and I did, I don't know, a dozen or more of those blow-offs until Bill stopped doing them. How I got started on this ridiculous little instrument was I got exposed to harmonicas. My folks used to listen to a lot of Benny Goodman and this and that and the other thing, and Artie Shaw, and so I really liked that the big band stuff. But you know, during that time, I think the harmonicas were probably on Ed Sullivan. So I'd seen them in live performances, Harmonica Rascals, Johnny Paleo, and all those guys, and so I was always kind of interested in the instrument, in the sound and everything. And so my folks ended up buying me a chromatic harmonica, and I didn't know what the hell to do with that. So I had that thing sitting around for a while, and I tried to figure out Peg of My Heart, some of those other tunes that I just couldn't do it. So it just sat around for the most part, and I just fiddled around with it, and I never really had any other direction with it. And when I went over to Vietnam, I was exposed to Sonny Boy Williamson and the Yardbirds with Eric Clapton, and I heard that album and I was just absolutely gone. I couldn't believe it. Everybody wanted to listen to Led Zeppelin. Could I listen to that one album again, that one with that harmonica player on there? And so then I got home, I bought my own copy, and I I played it till it was to damn near separated the album. I played so much in the deep grooves of the thing where you couldn't even hardly hear it after a while. But so I started doing that when I got home, and I started playing by ear. And I remember my folks wanted me to get a job. That's all they wanted me to do, and I wanted to collect my unemployment and have a good time, and I wanted to figure out how to play harmonica. And I had bought some albums, some Sonny Terry albums, and I started playing along with those with a record. And I realized that my turntable turned at the right speed, so as long as I got the right keyed harmonica, it'd always go along with the thing. So I taught myself how to play along with guitar players. And so I kind of had the whole idea of call and response. And then my mom started harping at me so much about getting a job. I thought maybe the best thing for me to do was get a place to live where I'm not living at my folks' house. So I put the harmonicas in my car and drove off and lived with three other veterans, and we all sat around, and I sat around and I could play to my heart's content with any kind of music I wanted to without driving my folks crazy. Harmonica players and harmonicas they have a way of, irritating folks if they're not played correctly. And generally speaking, they don't play them in the correct keys. So I learned how to do that. And then my mother was real instrumental, and she wanted me to get your name out there, because she was exposed to all that stuff as well. Exposed to, in her lifetime, she's like almost like a pinup girl. She'd had all this clippings of her in her lingerie and what have you. She used to do displays for the New York magazines and the New York newspapers. And I didn't have any idea until I saw her scrapbook how involved she was with all this stuff. And she was quite good looking. So she had good success with that. And you believe it so far, and then after a while you go, you didn't really do all this stuff, Mom, did you? It's just she's got a picture of her with W.C. Fields standing there, and she was there with her dad, and he was, I think, involved with General Motors or something. He was involved with promotional, and he was trying to get some advertising work done, and I don't know where they were, at Paramount Studios or where they were at exactly. And W.C. Fields happened to be there at the time, and they asked my grandfather, would your daughter like to have a shot with W.C. Fields and take a picture? Yeah, sure. So there it is, the picture with her in her little olive oil dress, standing next to W.C. Fields. So my mom would go, see, I wasn't lying. I told you, I'd met all these people. So we came to pretty much being true believers. So my mother was interested in my entertaining and my performance career. And my sister was a concert violinist, and she played with the Boston Symphony a couple of different times, and then played with the Niagara Falls Symphony Orchestra for a little while. And then she was living up in Canada. And now she's living in Vancouver, BC, where she played with the Vancouver, BC Symphony Orchestra for a while. And now she's teaching on her own violin. She's excellent classical violinist. And so there was a little music that ran in our family. And I just happened to pick up one of those 5 and dime instruments that you could pick up real cheap. And now harmonicas are going for almost $50 a piece, so they're not so cheap anymore. But they're still a great instrument. They're so portable. You take them wherever you want them. And then there's virtually the only limitation, I think, in the instrument is the player itself. Because you could play classical tunes on it, you could play Coltrane jazz. There's oodles of things that can be played, styles of music. So limitations only by the player itself. At that point, I was just kind of freelancing it when I wasn't playing with Terry, and I started playing and doing some miscellaneous jamming with Mike Osborne. And we weren't serious about doing anything in particular. We just wanted to to get together and see what happened. And Mike had seen me play here and there, and I was playing at some of the blow-offs and doing this and that. And then during all that time, I was still playing with Liquid and doing blow-offs and doing this gig and going out of town and doing a gig with this person and that person. And then finally Mike decided, we kept jamming and stuff, and he decided that, well, we need a bass player. It just so happens I'd been playing with a bass player who had a really good voice, Ken Jackson. We just had some gigs that Mike had booked with the band. He was playing with Bill's band for a while, and then they broke apart, and he wanted to do something, so we started booking it as a 4-piece, and we did some originals, and the three of us. Johnny was never into singing. He could never talk him into doing any singing, but he's a great drummer, and so it was the three of us did the singing, and we had some harmonies that were fun to do, and then we did a couple of Ken's tunes that were originals, and Mike had a bunch of originals himself. And as a matter of fact, I had an original instrumental that I did, and then I wrote one song when I was with Mike, Retirement Blues, and which is featured on this film at some point. And about the time we started putting together tunes and stuff, I had the notion to put together a compilation CD of my own. So what I did was I put some Kelly Joe Phelps stuff on there, and I put some Blues Police stuff on there, and I didn't have anything with Sheila. I put some stuff with Steve and I, and then I did a jazz number with one of the guys I was running the board, and then I did about 5 numbers with Ken and another band with just live recordings, and then I put some stuff on there with Mike Osborne. It's a compilation CD, and it turned out really good, and I sold well over 1,000 copies at festivals and the gigs and this and that and the other thing. And then we went on the road, which we did once a year. We went down to Ukiah and did some stuff in the Bay Area. And we sold CDs down there, and they went well. We sold Mike's CDs and mine, and it went pretty well. That band was probably my favorite 4-piece band. They did everything. Mike had played with Robin Ford for years, and he knew the Ford family down there in Ukiah, and so he was connected to those guys early on, and he knew how to. He's a great guitar player. And a great bunch of guys, a terrific guys to work with. And so after all that was said and done, I decided to do a few things of my own. So I was doing shows up in Everett area, where I knew several people. And I got an opportunity to do some shows with Mark Dufresne, who's a great harmonica player, singer. He worked with Roomful of Blues for a number of years in a band out of Boston, and he was the lead singer and a harmonica player. Just a terrific entertainer, and a great harmonica player and singer, like I said before. And so I got an opportunity to do about 3 or 4 shows in a period of about, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And one of them was a benefit for Jim McLaughlin, a close friend of mine, and we did it in the theater up there in Everett. They had a rejuvenated theater, and we all had, it was like myself and Mark Dufresne and Jim and his band, and then the guy from Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. After that, I more or less just started working here and there with Whiskey Hill, and I've been with those guys, I don't know, maybe a good, off and on, a good 5 years anyway, you know. And so, terrific bunch of guys, hard workers, really dedicated to what they're doing. They still think they're getting together on a regular basis. And there aren't very many gigs around, but they're ready to jump on it the minute there is. So I got some nice recordings from those guys, some live stuff. And I've been lucky to play with those guys and all these other terrific musicians around town. Everybody that I've been in bands with have taught me a little bit of something as I was going through this process. And it was like playing with Terry. You had to be snappy and ready to go. if you weren't, you just get, because, well, if you're not ready, Dave, we'll get back to you later. It's like, well, Dave, let's do a song, and you got to be ready to do it right then. And you better have 2 or 3 ready to go, because he'll go, gee, Dave, I like that. Why don't you do another? And so I'd do 2 or 3 of them. So there for a while, I'd group all my songs together, 3-song grouping. So I'd be ready for Terry whenever he asked me to do another tune. I wouldn't be at a loss for words. And yeah, play with Terry. And then I was lucky enough in my harmonica career to cross paths with Paul DeLay. And Paul was absolutely my favorite harmonica player, pretty much all time. But around here, he was, bar none, the best harmonica player going. And took a couple lessons from him, got up to, and did shows with him at the blow-offs, got up and got to sit in with his bands and one configuration or another. And he was real generous with his time and his advice. And he's just a terrific harmonica player. It's a darn shame that he's not around anymore, but he really livened up the blues scene around town. I think him and his bands that he had, Brown Sugar and his own bands and all those guys, they were instrumental in making this blues scene what it was for a number of years, 30, 40 years probably anyway. I went across country with 3 guys. That was with Jim McLaughlin in '89, and I studied with Howard Levy for a week in West Virginia at Elkins and Davis College in West Virginia. And it was a week's worth of crazy stuff with Western swing bands and all kinds of other stuff, and music was going on all week long. And Howard was, was very informative, so much so they left me in the dust after about 4 days. So he get into the technical aspect of playing harmonica, and he kind of left me. I felt like I was on the outside, as well as a bunch of other guys did, I think, as well. And so, but that was a extremely worthwhile experience. Needless to say, traveling across country with 2 hippies. One guy's tie-dye and the other guy had a patch over his eye. Both of them long hair, and I was the only halfway looking straight guy. But traveling across country was definitely an experience. But all 3 of us made it there, and made it in one piece. We had to split up on the way back because one of the guys decided he wanted to, our ride decided he wanted to stay in Detroit for an extra week, and I had to get home. So, but that's another story altogether. That week was pretty eventful.
Wanna be a personal manager, baby. Wanna do everything I can for you. Wanna be a personal manager, baby. Wanna do everything I can for you. I'll still be right here by your side, baby, when all your so-called friends are through. You signed my contract, baby. too long, little girl.
Big hand. Bring it on.
You can rest assured, baby. Wanna be your personal manager, baby. Wanna do everything I can for you. Wanna be a milkman in the morning. The ice cream man when the day is
Well, by the way, they're filming a documentary on this guy tonight. These people that are doing this filming is because of him. So we're lucky to have him.
Hey, how about this band, huh? How about this band?
I paid him to say that.
you know what to do. What's it here? Go and bring the town.